In this video, I'm going to show you what you need to consider when you're bulking. Last week, I had a comment from Faris Too Nice. I'll put it up here. Can you please make that bulking considerations vid? About to get into a bulk soon over the winter and want to know the most optimal way to go about it and get the best results. Cheers. Let's get stuck into it. What is bulking? Bulking is ultimately gaining weight, but we want to gain more muscle than we do fat. And there are things that we need to consider along the way. The first thing we need to consider is the amount of calories that we're consuming. If you follow me on Instagram, you already know this, at Brock Ashby. We need to be in a calorie surplus when we're trying to bulk. That's the only way we can gain weight. We have to be consuming more calories than we burn throughout the day. If you're not eating more calories than you burn throughout the day, it's literally impossible because of the law of thermodynamics to gain weight. So we must create a calorie surplus, and that puts us in a net positive position of calories. So the extra calories that we have, because we're consuming more than we burn, can help us build muscle and help us go through the processes we need to build muscle and get stronger and recover faster. And most people that struggle to gain weight, which used to be me, don't consume enough calories. So here's 4 tips to eat more food. Number 1, try to drink as many calories as possible. Number 2, try to eat food that you really enjoy eating. If you love burgers, eat burgers. If you love sandwiches, eat sandwiches. If you love oats, eat oats. The more you enjoy eating a food, the less resistance you'll have to eat it. Number 3, eat more regularly. If you're leaving big gaps between meals, it's going to be really hard to stuff yourself when you need to get in those calories. Number 4, consider how much fiber you're consuming throughout the day. If you're eating a lot of clean foods, a lot of fruit, a lot of vegetables, often that fiber is going to fill you up and it's going to prevent you from eating more calories. Sometimes people get hooked on eating such clean food that the fiber just fills them up and they can't eat enough calories because they feel so full and their stomach is feeling really full and bloated. Sometimes we have to go down the non-clean route to consuming more food because it helps us consume more calories. Often a big mistake people will make is keep eating chicken, rice, and broccoli and having a lot of oats and having a lot of high fiber foods because that's what they're used to when they're dieting. But when we're trying to gain weight, we literally sometimes need to bring down the fiber so we can consume more food and feel less full because we're going from eating low calories in a calorie deficit to now eating high amount of calories in a surplus to optimize the bulking process. So often, instead of eating the brown rice and chicken and broccoli, we could benefit from having chicken fried rice from a Chinese shop. Or maybe we can have a burger, or maybe we can have an ice cream, or maybe we can have a thick shake or a milkshake. Now, I'm not trying to say go and eat junk food, but consuming foods that are often less clean can help you get more calories in whilst feeling less full. If you want to know how much fiber you should be consuming for the amount of calories that you're currently on, make sure you watch to the end of the video because I tell you how much fiber you should be consuming on the amount of calories that you're on. The second bulking consideration is your training. A lot of people just don't build muscle because they train poorly. Here's some things that you need to consider with your training. Number 1, are you training close enough to failure? You need to train at least 3 reps in reserve close to failure. That means if you did 10 reps on the bench press and you stopped and you felt like, oh, I could only get 3 more, that's 3 reps in reserve. You had 3 reps left in the tank until complete failure. That's the bare minimum that we want to be when we're trying to build muscle or trying to train in general, but especially when you're trying to bulk. You need to be at least 3 reps in reserve as our baseline or higher. We can go to 2 reps in reserve or 2 reps left in the tank, 1 reps in reserve or 1 rep left in the tank, or 0 reps in reserve, training to complete failure. So anywhere from 3 all the way up to 0 is the place we want to be when we're trying to build muscle or trying to bulk. And if you're not training hard enough, it's simply not going to give your muscles a strong enough signal that they need to grow because your muscles will think, well, I'm just getting by doing this and using X amount of muscle. That's completely fine. That's why we need to train harder and harder and harder and harder throughout a program to show our muscles, hey, we're going to need a lot more muscle to lift this amount of weight. Why can athletes lift more than prisoners? Because the pros outweigh the cons. The second thing you need to consider is your training program. Is your training program structured well? I love a 3 upper, 2 lower training split for my male clients. For my female clients, I like a 3 lower, 2 upper split. That's training 5 days a week and taking 2 rest days off. That works really well, and those 2 days off work really well for recovery, and also you get to bias the upper body for the males, which is often what we're focusing on, and biasing the lower body for the females, which is often what they want to focus on. Obviously, that doesn't have to be the training program split, but that's a great place to start. If you're going to the gym and just showing up and doing random workouts, you're going to get random results and you're not going to bulk, because what a lot of people do is they start a workout and just kind of do whatever they want. And then the next day they'll go into the gym and just do whatever they want. And then the next day they'll do whatever they want. And it just kind of keeps going like that. If you're doing different workouts every time, you can't measure the amount of progress that you're making. You don't know if you're getting stronger of a certain exercise because you keep changing exercises. When we do an exercise, variation is good because it keeps it exciting and we're doing different things. But we can't have too much variation because then we don't get good at anything. Think about getting good at a sport. If you want to be good at basketball, you need to practice basketball and you need to do that over and over again. But if you're trying to get good at basketball, one day you practice rugby, one day you practice soccer, then you practice baseball, and then you practice basketball, you're not going to get as good as the person that was just doing basketball. That's the same thing with the training program. Follow the same training program for a week, then repeat that training week for 4 weeks, then you have 4 weeks to practice that entire program and then change programs. Don't do too much variation. Focus on progression and getting better and getting better and getting better and getting better. And then you'll hit a plateau and then it's time to move on to do a different program. The third thing you need to focus on is the sustainability of your program. Often when people are trying to bulk, they go, I'm gonna train every day, I'm gonna smash it. And then they train 3 days, they're stuffed, and then they just give up. Find a training split that's sustainable for you. If you can only train 3 times a week, train 3 times a week. If you can only train 4 times a week, train 4 times a week. If you can only train for 45 minutes, then do a 45-minute program. Don't try and stretch yourself too thin and say you're gonna train 90 minutes every single day and just absolutely kill it when you're just living a lie. Do something sustainable because that's going to be more long-term and you're going to get better results over time. The third thing you need to consider when bulking is your recovery. Ultimately, number 1, that's your sleep. You need to be sleeping 7 to 9 hours. If you're sleeping less than that, you're just not going to be recovering and your performance in the gym is going to be pretty shit compared to a well-slept, well-energized person. The second thing you need to consider is your rest days. Are you taking rest days? As I said before, a lot of people just say, I'm gonna smash it and just go to the gym every day, but then they don't actually stick to it. And also training every day isn't a good thing. You need time to recover. Number 3, is there enough time between hitting the same muscle group? If you're doing chest on Monday, you can't hit chest on Tuesday. You need to hit it at least Wednesday or after. If you're hitting legs on Tuesday, don't do legs the next day. All right, this might be common sense, but for a lot of people, they're hitting the same muscle group over and over and over again, especially if they want to grow it. So if you want to grow your arms, don't train arms every day. You need time for it to grow. Good general rule to keep in your back pocket is to leave at least 1 day before hitting the same muscle group. But if a muscle group is still sore after 1 day, then just train a different muscle group and let that muscle group recover. So if you train chest on Monday and it's sore on Tuesday and you're meant to train it on Wednesday but it's still sore, then do a leg day then and then train your chest on Thursday, so it's going to give yourself time to recover. Never train a muscle group that's sore because we need to recover from the training or the stress that it had on that workout. The fourth bulking consideration is that muscle growing is a slow process. Losing fat is a fast process, and that's why it's hard when you're like, oh, I want to lose weight, and you lose 8 kg and it's like, bang, you can lose 8 kg in 8 weeks, let's say. But if you want to build 8 kg of muscle, that could take 8 years or even more. Muscle building is a slow process, so get that in your mind. It's a slow process. It's actually more inconvenient for your body to carry around more muscle, because if you are walking around with more muscle mass, your body has to feed you more calories. So from an evolutionary point of view, that's not a good thing. We used to be all about survival, and we needed to live off less calories because food was hard to find. Now we have food in abundance, so it's not a big deal. But from an evolutionary perspective, it's not efficient for us to carry around more muscle mass. So we're literally going against what our body wants to do. So it's a hard process. Synthesizing muscle and gaining muscle mass is a hard process, so stick to it. For the last 2 to 3 years, I've probably gained half a kg of muscle, or 1 pound of muscle, 500 grams, over a whole year of training 5 to 6 times per week. It's a very slow process. That's why it's important to have aesthetic goals as well as performance-based goals, because often when we go into this muscle building process and we're in a calorie surplus, we often gain weight and look a bit fluffier. But if we have performance-based goals, like I want to squat 100 kg or I want to deadlift 200 kg, you can focus on them so that we have other things, other goals, other carrots on the end of the stick to motivate us to keep pushing and getting stronger and building muscle and doing these good things that take time but are well worth it. Because if we just focus on aesthetic goals like, oh, I want to build muscle, but then you actually gain a bit of fat whilst you're building muscle, which is totally normal, you can often lose motivation and then you think, oh, I need to cut. So then you start cutting and then you don't give muscle building a real shot. The fifth point you need to consider when you're bulking is, are you consuming the right amount of calories? And if you are unsure, then you can use my calorie calculator. Now, if you choose a calorie surplus or you want to gain weight and build muscle, then it's going to give you a 5% calorie surplus. And that is a great place to start. That is 5% above your maintenance calories. So you are going to be in a calorie surplus, but you're not going to be in a huge calorie surplus where you're going to gain a lot of fat. I'm all about bulking, but in a lean manner. So not gaining too much body fat. A huge mistake that people make when they're trying to gain weight is just eating whatever they can see. They jump on the seafood diet. Oh, I see that food, eat it. See that food, eat it. See that food, eat it. And they just eat too much food and they just get fat. And then they're just like, oh, I need to cut. And then they start cutting, but they haven't actually built muscle. They've just got fat. So they try to build muscle, but they just get fat and then they cut again. And they get in this cycle where they're just gaining fat to lose fat, gaining fat to lose fat. But if you have a slight calorie surplus, like the 5% surplus that I will give you in my calorie calculator, then you will build muscle without gaining much fat, which is gonna make your body look much better as you progress through your bulk. Finally, it's time to give you the amount of fiber that you should be consuming for the amount of calories that you're on, and that is 15 grams per 1,000 calories. So if you're trying to consume 3,000 calories on your diet, you should be consuming at least 45 grams of fiber per day. Please subscribe. See you in the next video.